Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the overwhelming noise of the modern world, the data, the articles, the endless stream of information, and distill it down into pure, actionable insight for you.
Today, we are tackling something foundational.
Absolutely. We're getting into what might be the single most crucial concept for any strategist, any leader, or really anyone trying to understand why certain companies seem to have this perpetual winning streak, while others, even with a great product, just vanish.
That's right. Our mission today is to decode the business environment. And this isn't just about, reading the headlines or keeping up with market news.
No, not at all. It's about understanding the massive, complex, and ever-changing landscape that surrounds every single enterprise.
And if you miss the signals in this environment, you become obsolete. It's that simple. But if you catch them, you can capture the market.
Okay, so let's unpack this concept. When we talk about the business environment, what are we actually talking about? Let's get a working definition on the table.
At its core, it's the aggregate of all external forces, factors, and institutions.
Aggregate, so the sum total of everything.
Everything. And these elements are inherently external to the firm. They exist completely beyond its direct control, but they exert this powerful, sometimes existential influence on how that company functions and performs.
So you can't change it, but you have to live with it.
Exactly. Think of the individual business firm as a finely tuned engine. That's the microunit.
Right.
The business environment is the massive, swirling, and often turbulent ocean. That's the macro framework within which that engine has to operate.
That's a great analogy.
And the goal of a good leader isn't to control the ocean because, you can't. The goal is to read the currents, understand the weather, and navigate accordingly.
And these currents are things like what? New trade treaties.
Yeah.
A shift in public opinion.
All of that. Everything from a new global trade treaty to a really subtle shift in public opinion about sustainability. That collective sum is the environment. And what's truly fascinating here, and what makes it so hard to grasp, is that these elements aren't isolated. They are highly interactive and interrelated.
So they're constantly creating this state of flux.
The constant state of flux, yes.
So what's the strategic hook for you, the listener? Why does this matter so much?
Because understanding this environment is the shortcut to strategic foresight. It's the essential difference between merely reacting to a crisis after it hits, scrambling to recover from a new regulation or a technology disruption.
And actually seeing it coming.
And proactively anticipating the crisis before it even materializes. It is the roadmap for anticipating, not just for surviving.
So it allows a company to stop playing defense and finally start playing offense.
That's the perfect way to put it. If you can properly scan the horizon, if you can filter that overwhelming totality of external forces, you gain the strategic advantage of spotting opportunities before your competition even knows they exist.
That ability to see around the corner.
It's the single greatest competitive advantage in the 21st century, period.
That sets the stage perfectly. Let's move from that high-level concept to the core characteristics that actually define this environment.
Yeah.
It's crucial to realize, as you said, this isn't a static photograph you can analyze once.
No, it's a moving, complex target.
And it operates under a few essential rules that we really have to understand first.
Right. And when we try to define this landscape, we see 6 primary features that consistently govern how businesses interact with the world around them.
Okay, so the first one is the one you mentioned earlier, and it's foundational. The environment is the totality of external forces. How should we conceptualize that overwhelming scope?
It's purely aggregative. When we use the term, we are literally, and I mean literally, referring to the sum total of everything that exists outside the walls of the business enterprise itself.
Which sounds impossible to analyze.
It is, in a way. The concept is inherently overwhelming because it includes financial markets, social trends, political stability, even the weather. It means you can never fully analyze it all, but you must acknowledge that this totality dictates the context of your firm's existence.
And the second rule is maybe the most obvious source of stress for any CEO. This totality is dynamic. It never, ever sits still. It's defined by constant motion.
The dynamic nature is the source of both market opportunity and existential threat. It's always changing, and that change shows up in ways that are immediate and visible.
Like what?
You see it through the entry of new competitors, a startup suddenly disrupting a legacy industry.
Right, the classic disruptor.
You see it through the rapid development and adoption of new technology, forcing these rapid, really expensive changes. And maybe most frequently, you see it in the swift, shifts in consumer preferences and habits.
Yeah, that one feels like it's accelerating every year.
Think about how rapidly the world moved from favoring physical media to digital streaming. If you stopped paying attention for a single business quarter, the entire competitive landscape might have already changed dramatically.
That constant inherent motion naturally leads us to the third feature, which is uncertainty. I mean, if it's always moving, how can we possibly predict it?
You've hit on the core problem. Given how frequently and rapidly these shifts occur, the environment is fundamentally uncertain. It becomes exceptionally difficult to accurately predict future events with any reliable certainty.
Especially in certain industries, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. This is particularly true when we look at fast-changing aspects like fashion trends, high-level geopolitical shifts, and of course technological advancements. What is cutting edge today can be, and often is, obsolete tomorrow.
Which makes prediction a high-stakes guessing game.
It really does. It relies much more heavily on scenario planning rather than strict forecasting. You have to plan for multiple possible futures.
Okay, next up we have the feature that explains why you can't look at one element in isolation. Interrelatedness. This is the chain reaction principle we need to grasp, right?
Yes, this is so important. It means that the different elements of the environment are closely interwoven and perpetually influence one another.
So a change in one area causes ripples everywhere else.
Everywhere. Let's look at a concrete example of this chain reaction. Imagine a single social shift, a growing public awareness of environmental sustainability.
Okay, that's a big one right now.
A huge one. That single social factor immediately led to changes in the legal environment. New carbon taxes, recycling mandates.
Which in turn affects technology.
Exactly. This spurred massive investment in the technological environment, new battery tech, cleaner manufacturing processes. These changes ultimately affect the economic environment, like higher production costs for firms that don't comply, and even the lifestyle of the consumer.
Who now actively chooses eco-friendly products.
Right. So a shift in a social attitude causes shifts across political, technological, and economic lines. That's interrelatedness in action. You can't touch one part without affecting the whole.
And because businesses operate in a global context, the environment is also defined by relativity.
Absolutely. The business environment is highly specific to location. It differs drastically from country to country and even from region to region within a large country.
This isn't just about language barriers.
No, it's about cultural fundamentals. For instance, in India, deep cultural and social factors mean there is a high consistent demand for traditional attire like saris. That same demand is almost non-existent in, say, Japan, where cultural norms dictate different clothing choices. Or think about political stability in one region versus intense political uncertainty in another. That fundamentally reshapes the entire operating environment for businesses, impacting everything from labor laws to foreign investment risk.
Finally, we arrive at what might be the most difficult feature to manage: complexity.
Yeah.
Why is it so hard for a strategic team to grasp the overall effect of this environment?
Because of that intense interrelatedness we just discussed. Because all these things are happening at once, the environment is inherently complex. It consists of multiple elements that are shifting and interacting simultaneously.
So you can't just isolate one variable.
It's incredibly difficult. A company can't really isolate and truly understand the exact impact that a combination of, say, economic stagnation plus a new environmental regulation plus a competitor's technological breakthrough is having on the demand for their one single product.
That sounds like a job for advanced analytics, not just human intuition.
Precisely. This is where strategic foresight becomes tactical. Modern strategists address complexity not by trying to isolate factors, but by using predictive modeling, leveraging AI and machine learning to process simultaneous inputs.
So they're trying to move from "this is complicated" to
this is modelable, even if the result remains uncertain. They're seeking patterns in the combined synergistic effects of these simultaneous forces. It's about turning a theoretical problem into a tactical challenge.
That moves us perfectly from the theory, what the environment is, to the practical action. Why scanning this environment is so utterly essential for survival and growth. This isn't just academic. The insights gained translate directly into tangible competitive advantages.
Oh, absolutely. If a firm ignores the environment, it is, and I don't think this is an exaggeration, gambling with its future. Environmental scanning provides 6 major competitive advantages that really dictate market leadership.
And the first one is the prize everyone wants.
Oh.
the first mover advantage.
This is the massive benefit you get from recognizing an early market opportunity before any of your competitors do. You capture market share, you build brand loyalty, you establish distribution channels while your rivals are still sitting in a boardroom sketching out their response.
Can you give us a classic example of this in action?
The classic one is Maruti Udyog in the small car market. They were the first firm to recognize a specific confluence of factors in the late 20th century.
What were those factors?
First, rising petroleum prices globally, which made large cars uneconomical for many people. Second, this was happening at the same time as the rapid growth of a large aspirational middle class in India that desperately needed efficient, affordable transportation.
So a perfect storm of need and economic pressure.
A perfect storm.
Yeah.
They saw that gap early, moved quickly, and secured a market leadership that persisted for decades.
And we see modern examples of this constantly. I mean, you think about Netflix.
Absolutely. Netflix didn't invent online streaming, but what they did was recognize the convergence of two environmental factors.
Which were?
Faster internet infrastructure, that's the technological environment, and growing consumer fatigue with physical rental stores like Blockbuster. That's the social and competitive environment. By moving first, they redefined content consumption on a global scale.
Okay, so next up, environmental understanding drives better management decisions by fostering customer focus.
Yes. It forces management to become highly sensitive to the constantly changing needs and expectations of consumers. A firm that listens to the environment knows what the customer wants, sometimes even before the customer has explicitly demanded a new product.
It's about anticipating their needs, not just fulfilling their orders.
Exactly. Let's look at the phenomenon of FMCG companies. That stands for fast-moving consumer goods companies, like Hindustan Unilever. They launched small sachets of shampoo and other products.
Right, which seems like such a simple idea now.
Simple, but brilliant. Why did they do it? They realized that the customer base in many emerging markets often lacked the disposable income for large bottles, but still needed and wanted the convenience of the product.
So they adapted the product to the economic reality.
Precisely. They adapted their product packaging and pricing to the specific economic reality of their target customers. That responsiveness to the environment led to a massive, massive increase in sales volume.
And in our current era of just relentless disruption, scanning the environment is absolutely crucial for coping with change.
Change is not just an event anymore, it's a strategic process. Business leaders have to be prepared to cope with swift environmental changes. And to decide the correct direction and nature of that change, whether to invest in AI or shift supply chains leaders need to understand the external forces driving these changes.
And also what their own people and customers want.
And the aspirations of their employees and customers. For example, the contemporary business environment often demands immediate responsiveness, prompt decision-making.
Things move so fast.
So fast. And we see business leaders responding to this need for speed by increasingly delegating authority, empowering staff further down the organizational chain.
Why do that?
To eliminate the procedural delays that historically slowed down crucial decisions, they're literally restructuring their internal environment to cope with external dynamics.
The fourth benefit ties directly into reputation management. Public image enhancement.
This is a huge one. A business firm can dramatically improve its public image by demonstrating that it's sensitive to its environment and highly responsive to public aspirations.
Especially on social and environmental issues.
Especially then, leading firms like Reliance Industries and ICICI Bank built strong, positive images by proactively engaging with environmental forces, often through corporate social responsibility initiatives or transparent governance.
So environmental understanding equips them to be seen as what? Good citizens?
Proactive, responsible participants in society, not just entities focused on profit extraction. And that builds invaluable trust and goodwill, which acts as a strategic buffer during times of market volatility.
Environmental awareness also functions as a vital early warning signal.
The critical one. It provides advance notice of an impending threat or crisis, allowing the firm to take timely action to minimize any adverse effects.
Let's go back to the automotive sector for an example here.
Good idea. When new aggressive firms began entering the mid-segment car market, a significant threat to established players, a leader like Maruti Udyog didn't just sit back and watch.
So what did they do?
They immediately scanned the competitive environment and realized the threat was primarily based on product availability and novelty. Their response was purely tactical. They dramatically increased the production of their esteem model threefold,
Threefold, wow.
which allowed them to guarantee faster delivery times for their existing models. As a result, they captured a substantial share of the available market, maintained their leadership, and neutralized the threat before the competitors could even establish a foothold.
So they turned a threat into a market share grabbing opportunity.
They turned a threat into a successful market capture using agility. That's the power of an early warning.
Finally, all of this data gathering and analysis feeds directly into the most important management function: strategy formulation and planning.
This is where it all comes together. Environmental monitoring provides all the relevant, high-quality information you need for policymaking and long-term planning.
I think you had an example with ITC.
Yes, a company like ITC. They realized there was vast scope for growth in India's travel and tourism industry, but crucially, they also noted that the government was keen to promote this sector
Why was the government interested?
because of its high employment potential and foreign currency earning potential. This alignment of social trends, economic need, and political support guided their long-term planning efforts.
So that external insight dictated their strategy.
It led them to aggressively plan new hotels and tourism infrastructure, both domestically and internationally. The external insight dictated their entire long-term growth policy and where they put their money.
To successfully manage this massive, dynamic, complex environment, we have to impose some kind of framework on it. We can't just look at everything.
Right, you'd be paralyzed.
So we look at two main dimensions: micro and macro. And this segmentation is crucial because it helps us define what we can control versus what we can only adapt to.
Understanding this distinction is absolutely vital, particularly from a manager's perspective.
So let's start with the microenvironment. What forces fall under this umbrella?
The microenvironment refers to those internal and external forces that exert a direct and continuous influence on the working and performance of a specific business organization.
So these are the things you're dealing with every single day.
Every single day. Your suppliers, your customers, your employees, they are intimately tied to your firm.
Okay, so that's micro. What about the macro environment?
This is the general or remote environment within which the firm and all of its micro forces operate. These are the powerful, large-scale shifts.
Global economic health, political revolutions.
Massive technological disruptions, sweeping changes in the law. And the critical difference is this. Macro forces are far, far less controllable than micro forces.
So you can't really change them.
No. Therefore, the long-term success of an enterprise depends heavily, perhaps overwhelmingly, on its ability to skillfully adapt to the macro environment forces that are beyond its control.
Let's start where a leader has the most influence then.
Yeah.
The internal factors. These factors exist within the business firm and define its very identity. These are the elements that management can actively shape, modify, or control.
Right. These internal controllable factors are the bedrock upon which your strategic strength is built. They determine whether a firm is even capable of seizing external opportunities when they appear.
We hear the term corporate culture thrown around constantly. When we put on our strategist hat, how does a company's internal corporate culture and value system translate into a hard competitive advantage?
It's the soul of the company, sure, but it's also a powerful operational tool. The core values, beliefs, and attitudes established by the founders and the top management exercise a profound influence on what the company stands for, how it conducts its business.
And what it prioritizes when things get tough.
And, most importantly, what it prioritizes when conflicts arise. When that value system is clearly defined and genuinely shared by all members, the organization is highly cohesive, decision-making is faster, and internal disputes are minimized.
Do you have a good example of that?
Think about Infosys Technology. Their reputation for high ethical standards and corporate governance stems directly from the value system established by its founder, Narayana Murthy.
So it's baked in from the start.
It's in the DNA. Strong cultures, like those you see at Wipro Corporation and Tata Steel, contribute significantly to sustained long-term success because they act as a force multiplier for every single employee.
Then we have mission and objectives, which define the purpose.
This is the guiding philosophy. The stated mission and core objectives guide the company's strategic priorities, its resource allocation, and the scope of its product market and development process.
It's the North Star for all decisions.
It is. For instance, Dhirubhai Ambani's aggressive mission to make Reliance the largest private sector group prompted him to launch world-scale plants in petrochemicals. These were huge strategic investments driven by that singular goal.
So the mission justifies the risk.
It directs where resources flow and what risks are acceptable. Similarly, Ranbaxy's focused mission to become a research-based international pharmaceutical company, that was the primary guiding force that led to its aggressive entry into complex, competitive foreign markets.
Next is top management structure. This covers the hard mechanics of governance and how decisions actually get made.
And the structure matters immensely. This includes the composition of the board of directors, the degree of management professionalization, and the actual organizational hierarchy.
How much of a difference does the board make?
A huge one. Highly qualified and responsible boards typically outperform those lacking strong oversight because they set the strategic direction and monitor performance effectively. Furthermore, the shareholding pattern is critical.
What do you mean by that?
Well, in closely held companies, like some tech firms, the promoters hold the majority and maintain strict control. But in widely held companies, where shares are dispersed, institutional investors play a much larger role.
And that can lead to conflict.
It can. We saw an intense conflict when Lord Swaraj Paul attempted a hostile takeover of DCM and Escorts. He ultimately failed because the financial institutions extended strong support to the original established promoters. So structure dictates control, and control dictates strategy.
And that structural setup influences the internal power structure.
It does. This focuses on the practical dynamics inside the organization. The often subtle relationship between the board of directors and the chief executive, and the extent to which top management enjoys the practical, functional support of key shareholders and employees at various levels.
So it's about internal politics, basically.
In a way, if the CEO lacks the trust of their operational managers or key investors, decision-making just grinds to a halt. This internal power alignment significantly influences both working efficiency and the speed of organizational decision-making.
The company's outward face is its image and brand equity.
This is a critical, yet often intangible, internal asset. It's far more than just marketing. It's practical leverage.
How so?
A strong image and high brand equity play a significant role in critical actions. Raising finance at preferential rates, forming strategic alliances with other major players, attracting reliable dealers and suppliers, launching new products with reduced risk, and entering complex foreign markets. A strong brand equity opens doors that are simply closed to firms with unknown or damaged reputations.
And finally, we have the fundamental operational resource, human and other resources.
Right. This involves the tangible assets like advanced machinery and capital, but critically, it includes the competence, morale, and motivation of your employees.
This is often the most overlooked source of strength, isn't it?
So often. Look at the experience of Tata Steel again. They successfully carried out a truly difficult, large-scale modernization and restructuring effort. They could only do that because they enjoyed an exceptionally high level of employee support and cooperation, often through specialized retraining programs.
And that's not always the case.
No, it contrasts sharply with companies that face immense difficulty or outright resistance from employees and unions when attempting similar large-scale changes. So, controllable factors are truly those elements a firm can manage to either facilitate or inhibit its own operations.
Okay, now we move to the external microforces. These are individuals, groups, or agencies that a firm contacts directly and frequently in the course of its daily business. So these are the immediate partners, rivals, and clients that define the firm's operational world.
Right. And while they're external, a firm has some leverage to influence them.
Why are they still considered micro then?
They're categorized as micro because they directly interact with the specific firm. They are part of the firm's specific ecosystem, but they are external because the firm can only influence, not strictly control, their actions.
Got it. Let's start with the most essential external factor, customers.
The core principle here is universal. A business exists to create and satisfy customers. And customers can be incredibly diverse. Individuals, households, government departments, commercial establishments.
Give me an example of that diversity.
Well, a specialized chemical company's customers might range from a local research lab to a global agricultural giant. Success hinges on selecting and segmenting your target markets based on factors like profitability, demand elasticity, and growth prospects.
And it's risky to put all your eggs in one basket.
It is strategically very risky to rely on a single customer group, particularly in modern volatile markets. And due to global liberalization, the customer environment is increasingly becoming globalized, which demands sophisticated, borderless strategies.
Next, we have competitors. You mentioned they come in two strategic varieties.
Yes, and understanding this distinction is key to competitive strategy. First, you have direct competitors. These are firms offering the same or very similar products.
Like Coca-Cola and Pepsi.
The classic example. Then you have indirect competition, which is much more subtle. This comes from firms that are vying for the same pool of discretionary income or resources.
What does that look like?
If you have extra money for entertainment, a cinema house faces indirect competition from a high-end restaurant, a streaming service, or a sports league. They are all fighting for the same disposable dollar, even though the products are completely different.
And with globalization, that battlefield gets a lot more crowded.
It means every company must now account for increased competition from both domestic rivals and powerful multinational corporations that are suddenly entering their turf.
Moving to the input side of the equation, we have suppliers. They provide crucial resources, but dependence on them is a major strategic vulnerability.
It is. Suppliers provide the crucial raw materials and components. Their reliability is paramount for uninterrupted operations, and they directly influence your quality levels and your manufacturing costs.
And the conventional wisdom is what? Don't rely on just one.
Exactly. Relying on a single supplier is dangerous. A strike, a natural disaster, a production problem on their end immediately halts your operations. That's why sustaining multiple sources of supply is always advisable.
But I want to challenge that conventional advice slightly. In highly specialized proprietary industries, think aerospace, niche pharmaceuticals, or high-end chip manufacturing, often there is only one source for a critical component. How does a strategist manage that unavoidable single-source risk?
That is an excellent point, and it's a very modern strategic dilemma. When true redundancy is impossible, the focus shifts from finding alternatives to controlling the existing relationship.
So you get closer to them, not further away.
You get much closer. Proactive companies, like we mentioned Maruti Udyog doing with their vendor development, they don't just ask for parts. They invest in their suppliers' quality control, they co-develop proprietary components, and sometimes they even take a minority financial stake in the supplier firm to ensure a shared destiny and priority.
So you manage the risk by making them a partner.
You manage the risk by forging a deep, collaborative relationship that makes the supplier's reliability an extension of your own internal operation.
The logistics of getting the product to the customer often depends on middlemen or marketing intermediaries.
These are the agents who facilitate the entire process. Wholesalers, retailers, transport firms, warehouses, and specialized services like advertising and insurance agencies. They serve as the critical link between the manufacturing company and its ultimate customers.
And their importance can't be overstated.
Not at all. The sheer success of massive, fast-moving consumer goods firms like Hindustan Unilever and Dabur India is arguably more dependent on their ability to build and manage vast, reliable, countrywide retail distribution networks than on the product itself. The intermediary is the bridge to volume.
Financial capacity and strategic ambition are influenced heavily by financiers.
This group includes all your capital providers, shareholders, financial institutions, debenture holders, and banks. The company's ability to execute ambitious strategies rests on its financial capacity and, critically, on the policies and risk attitudes of these financiers.
So their appetite for risk determines your ability to grow.
Absolutely. If a company wants to undertake a risky, cutting-edge project, but its financial partners are fundamentally risk-averse, the company may find it impossible to raise funds through new share issues or loans. Their policies dictate your growth trajectory regardless of your internal capabilities.
Finally, we address the diverse and increasingly powerful group known as publics.
Publics are any groups with an actual or potential interest in the company or those who influence the company's ability to achieve its objectives.
So this is a very broad category.
Very broad. It includes the media, environmentalists, NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and the local community where you operate. And they can have both a positive and a negative impact.
Let's start with the positive.
On the positive side, the media can disseminate useful information rapidly, and cooperation with the local community can significantly improve the firm's operational image and license to operate.
But in the age of viral social media, the negative side can be immediate and severe.
Absolutely. The local community, if they're concerned with public health, can rally opposition to force a company to suspend operations or demand expensive pollution control measures. NGOs frequently organize protests against firms suspected of unethical labor practices, cruelty against animals, or environmental damage.
And modern publics are very aware of these issues.
Hyper-aware. And issues like ESG, environmental, social, and governance are driven heavily by public expectations. Even seemingly minor missteps, like the company that faced media attacks for writing advertisements on rocks near a famous location, can severely damage a business's image and result in boycotts or regulatory action. They are the guardians of your social license to operate.
We now shift to the macro environment, the powerful, large-scale, and crucially less controllable forces that define the broad landscape. This is where massive opportunities are created, and at the same time where overarching threats come from.
This is the environment that truly demands strategic adaptation. And we break this down into 5 core components.
First up, the economic environment.
The economic environment consists of the factors and forces concerning the means of production and the distribution of wealth. It includes all forces of economic development that strongly influence the potential product-market scope of a business.
It's the temperature gauge of the global market.
A very good way to put it.
Give us a clear illustrative impact that demonstrates the sheer scale of this force.
Okay, a shift in the economic environment can either grease the wheels of industry or grind them to a halt. A decline in global interest rates, for instance, directly reduces the cost of capital for industry, making ambitious expansions cheaper and more viable.
And on the consumer side,
a rise in the disposable income of people in key markets immediately leads to growing demand for major purchases like homes and cars. Even changes in macroeconomic policies, like the liberalization of financial markets, have led to the explosive growth of entirely new financial sectors globally, like venture capital firms, mutual funds, and specialized leasing companies.
when analyzing this environment, we are often overwhelmed by the sheer volume of data. Instead of listing every single component, let's focus on a couple of key areas and their strategic impact. How do economic policies impact strategic planning?
Policies are foundational. This includes industrial policy, what sectors the government favors monetary policy, which is managed by central banks setting interest rates and controlling the money supply, and fiscal policy, set by the government, controlling taxes and spending.
So a change in any one of these has huge ripple effects.
Huge. If a central bank suddenly increases interest rates to combat inflation, it fundamentally changes the cost-benefit analysis for any large capital investment a business is considering, instantly throttling expansion plans. Conversely, tax cuts, that's fiscal policy, can suddenly release massive amounts of consumer spending into the market, creating overnight demand.
And what about industrial infrastructure? That seems like a very tangible, physical limiting factor.
It is the physical foundation of the economy. This includes transportation networks, communication systems, and power availability. For a global manufacturer, if the power grid in their primary operating zone is unreliable, their entire supply chain, and thus their costs, soar due to the need for backup systems and managing operational downtime.
So even if the market looks good on paper.
Exactly. If the transportation links are weak, inventory costs skyrocket. A country's gross national product, its GNP, might look good on paper, but if its underlying infrastructure is crumbling, strategic investment in that region becomes prohibitively risky.
Shifting gears now, the social environment deals with culture, habits, and demographics. The forces that define who the customers are, what they value, and how they live their lives.
The social environment consists of all the social and cultural forces influencing business operations. Population characteristics like size and income distribution directly affect overall demand patterns, dictating everything from product features to packaging size.
And we see very specific social shifts having immediate, powerful market consequences, often creating entirely new demographics for businesses to target.
Absolutely. Think about the modern trend of proactive health and wellness. This growing awareness about fitness and nutrition has led to a greater demand for nutritious foods, specialized exercise equipment, and dedicated slimming centers globally. This single social trend shifts trillions of dollars in spending.
And you mentioned the emergence of specific consumer groups like the doinkis.
Yes.
Okay, you're going to have to unpack that one for us. Doinkis.
Yeah, it's an acronym that's become quite common in marketing circles. It stands for double income, no kids.
Ah, right. So a demographic with a lot of disposable income.
A huge amount. This demographic is increasingly influential in metropolitan cities globally. They are typically highly educated couples in dual-career households who have chosen to postpone or forego having children, at least temporarily.
And their consumption habits are totally different.
Completely. Their spending, driven by high disposable income, relatively low debt, and a lack of immediate parental responsibilities, reshapes markets for luxury goods, premium travel, and cutting-edge technology. This isn't about buying diapers, it's about high-value discretionary items. They are a critical strategic target segment.
So understanding that shift in family structure and values guides marketing strategy. What other social components are crucial here?
We also look closely at social attitudes, customs, and lifestyles. Deep cultural norms determine what products are acceptable, how marketing messages are interpreted, and what services are desired. For instance, whether a culture values thrift versus immediate gratification fundamentally changes how you would structure consumer credit offerings.
And we must account for social concerns, which feeds into that earlier discussion we had about Publix.
Exactly. Major public issues regarding pollution, political corruption, the role of women and minorities in the workplace, and the power of the media are all part of this social fabric. When social concerns about, say, child labor become paramount, it forces every major global apparel brand to overhaul its sourcing and manufacturing audit processes, incurring significant cost.
So that's a direct external social pressure forcing internal business change.
Precisely.
The technological environment is the engine of change, constantly driving productivity gains, but at the same time causing massive disruption and rapid obsolescence. It's a real double-edged sword.
It really is. The technological environment refers to the state of science and technology, the organized knowledge, including the rate of technological change, R&D systems, manufacturing processes, and specialized equipment, like the increasing use of robotics or even quantum computing.
What factors influence the strength and speed of a country's technological environment? Because some countries seem to innovate much faster than others.
Well, it depends on the prevailing spirit of invention and innovation, the quality and accessibility of specialized research and development facilities, both public and private, and crucially, the legal protection granted to intellectual property rights.
That last one seems really important.
It is. If a company knows its investment in innovation will just be stolen or copied immediately, the incentive to invest is gone. Furthermore, a company's access to foreign technology through trade agreements or specialized hiring is essential for keeping pace.
Let's explore the dual consequences of rapid technological change. What's the high-stakes trade-off here?
The positive consequences are obvious. Technology improves productivity, it enhances product quality, and it increases the competitiveness of industry by lowering long-term production costs.
But the negative consequences are substantial.
And often underestimated. Advanced technology requires huge initial capital investment and a highly skilled workforce that needs constant retraining. More critically, rapid technological shifts cause swift obsolescence of your existing plant, machinery, and even your employee skill sets.
It sounds like technology is this fantastic engine that also leaves behind a graveyard of suddenly obsolete machinery and highly stressed managers who are just struggling to keep up.
That's a perfect summary of the phenomenon we call creative destruction. The introduction of one innovation inevitably wipes out an established market entirely.
Blockbuster Video is the go-to example here.
They were destroyed not by a better video rental store, but by two separate technological disruptions. First, Netflix's DDD by mail system, which was a logistics tech change, and then streaming, a communications tech change. The color television eliminated the market for black and white sets. Xerography damaged the carbon paper business.
And what's a current example?
Right now, the proliferation of large-scale e-commerce warehouses and shopping malls is significantly affecting traditional retail business models in big cities, rendering decades of localized real estate strategy obsolete.
The political environment. This encompasses government, policy, and stability, the framework of public affairs management, and its direct business impact. It dictates the fundamental rules of engagement.
It does. The political environment consists of the forces concerning the management of public affairs and how they directly impact business. In modern economies, the government plays an active interventionist role through regulation, subsidies, and trade agreements. And political changes can exercise immense immediate influence.
We have some striking historical examples of how political stability, or the lack of it, really defines market access.
Yes, the classic example is the experience of Coca-Cola and IBM. They were famously forced to leave a major market like India due to the very strict nationalistic government policy that was prevailing during the late 1970s.
But that can change just as quickly.
It can. Conversely, a supportive political climate made specific cities like Bangalore and Hyderabad the most popular locations for information technology firms by offering tax incentives and infrastructure support. And then later, subsequent political changes, a shift toward economic liberalization, led directly to the re-entry or initial entry of companies like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, and IBM.
So the prevailing ideology of the ruling party directly dictates who's allowed to play.
Who is allowed to play, where they can invest, and how much profit they can repatriate.
When analyzing the political environment, what are the key strategic components we should be monitoring?
Beyond just the policy of the day, you need to monitor the entire framework, the constitutional framework, the basic rights and structure of governance. The political philosophy and stability. Is the current government likely to last its term? How radical is its ideology regarding private enterprise?
Because instability creates uncertainty.
It creates crippling business uncertainty, which slows long-term investment. You also have to watch foreign policy and defense policy, as these define international relations and global trade security. A deterioration in relations between two nations can instantly sever years of profitable trade links for companies operating in those regions.
Finally, we must understand the rules of the game, the legal regulatory environment that shapes, permits, and constrains business operations.
Business has to function within the framework of national laws and regulations. So, the legal environment exerts a fundamental influence on business activities, often acting as a necessary guardrail, a powerful constraint, or sometimes an aggressive facilitator. The legal framework determines what is permissible in product development, advertising, labor relations, and financial reporting.
Have recent legal changes had a big impact on opening up global markets?
A massive impact. We should probably define FDI here. That's foreign direct investment. Recent modifications in global and national laws, like the removal of controls over foreign exchange and the liberalization of FDI norms, have directly facilitated the entry of several multinational corporations into previously closed markets.
And what about capital markets?
The deregulation of capital markets, which allows easier buying and selling of financial assets, has caused a surge, even allowing foreign companies to bypass domestic banks and issue shares directly to local investors.
What are the key components of this legal framework that a company has to monitor day to day?
There are four main areas. The first is the specific laws concerning the promotion, operation, and expansion of business, corporate, and contract laws. Second, consumer protection and environmental laws, which are constantly evolving.
Right.
Third is the flexibility and adaptability of the laws. Can the legal system quickly change to meet new technological or social needs, or is it rigid and slow? A system that's too slow can stifle innovation. And finally, the judicial system of the country.
Meaning, can you actually enforce a contract?
Exactly. Is the system fair, timely, and enforceable? If contracts cannot be enforced reliably through the courts, the fundamental basis for commerce collapses, regardless of how attractive the market might look otherwise.
Wow. We've covered a vast territory, from the internal morale of employees to the unstoppable power of global technological currents. So how do we bring these diverse, complex, and interrelated forces together for systematic strategic decision-making?
This is the critical step.
And the systematic approach is known universally as SWOT analysis.
SWOT is the logical and systematic analysis of the strengths, S, weaknesses, W, opportunities, O, and threats, T, of a firm. It is the primary tool for translating that chaotic environmental understanding into actionable, coherent strategy. It helps companies focus their limited resources where they can generate the highest return.
And the beauty of SWOT is how cleanly it integrates the two environmental dimensions we just discussed, the controllable and the uncontrollable.
Exactly. It's a very elegant framework. The first half, strengths and weaknesses, are identified by analyzing the internal environment, which is generally controllable by the firm. These are things you can change with management effort.
And the other half?
The second half, opportunities and threats, are identified by analyzing the external environment, which is less controllable. These are forces you must adapt to, mitigate, or capitalize on.
Let's quickly confirm the definitions, starting with the internal factors. What is a strength? S.
A strength is an inherent internal capability of the company that it can use to gain a strategic advantage over its competitors.
So things like having a lot of cash on hand.
Exactly. Examples include having huge financial resources, a strong management team, a universally recognized brand, or possessing the latest proprietary technology. These are unique internal resources you can leverage for offense.
And what defines a weakness? WO.
A weakness is an inherent limitation or constraint within the company that actively creates a strategic disadvantage. These are limitations that drain your resources or create vulnerabilities.
For instance, having outdated tech.
Obsolete technology is a perfect example. Others could be a poor financial position, inexperienced staff, or internal power dynamics that slow down decision-making. These are weaknesses that must be addressed or neutralized strategically.
Okay, now moving to the external factors. What defines an opportunity?
An opportunity is a favorable condition existing in the company's external environment that enables the firm to strengthen its position or expand its market.
Such as?
Examples might be liberal government policies suddenly opening a new sector, declining interest rates making capital cheaper, or the sudden emergence of that high-spending doinkis demographic we talked about.
And conversely, a threat, T.
A threat is an unfavorable condition in the external environment that causes potential damage or risk to the firm's position. These might include increasing competition from cheaper substitutes like streaming replacing physical media, the sudden political corruption of a key market, or a major change in trade tariffs.
The strategic value here is the application, not just making a list. How does a strategy team use SWOT to move from analysis to action? Let's take a specific example of an external threat combined with an external opportunity.
This is where strategy formulation becomes really sophisticated. You might have a threat like, new stringent environmental regulations are forcing up the manufacturing cost of all legacy firms.
Okay, that sounds purely negative.
On the surface, yes. But your environmental scanning also reveals an opportunity. The government is simultaneously offering massive R&D grants and tax breaks for companies investing in green, sustainable technology.
So how does a firm combine those two?
A shrewd strategist identifies this TO link and realizes the threat actually enables the opportunity. The strategy becomes aggressively invest heavily in the new green technology using those government grants and tax breaks.
So you turn the threat into an advantage?
You transform the high regulatory burden, the threat, into a competitive cost advantage and secure the future of the firm, which is the opportunity. You don't fight the threat. You leverage the accompanying opportunity to leapfrog competitors who are merely reacting to the cost increase.
That systematic, logical framework is what allows a firm to capitalize on external conditions and ensure its long-term viability.
Exactly.
What a critical deep dive. We've covered a vast amount of territory today, from the nuances of internal corporate values and employee morale, all the way to the unstoppable power of global technological currents and political stability.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. And we've reiterated time and again that the business environment is complex, it's highly uncertain, and it's constantly moving. But understanding its components is not optional. It's the price of entry for modern leadership.
And the key takeaway, the practical application for you, the learner, is really the concept of adaptability. While you have control over your internal factors, your strengths and weaknesses, your ultimate long-term success relies entirely on your firm's agility and its ability to constantly monitor and adapt to those less controllable macro environment forces.
The economic, social, technological, political, and legal dimensions.
All of them. If you can read the signals and see the wave coming, you can ride it to market dominance. If you don't, it will crush you.
We spent significant time detailing the high degree of interrelatedness, noting how economic indices and political stability are massive components that interact globally. We saw how a demographic shift, like the rise of the doinkis, creates entirely new market opportunities.
Given this interconnected reality, here is a final provocative thought for you to consider. We noted that the political environment and the economic environment are deeply intertwined. What happens when a major global power, driven by sudden, severe political pressure at home, decides to effectively weaponize its economic indices, say, aggressively manipulating its domestic interest rates not for domestic stability, but to achieve a purely foreign policy goal?
That's a scary thought.
How does a mid-sized multinational company, focused only on its local market, detect and adapt to that purely external macroeconomic ripple effect washing across the globe?
It just shows you how small the global business world truly is and how far your sphere of strategic awareness must extend. That's all for this deep dive. We hope you feel a little more informed and a lot more prepared for the environment ahead.